Welcome, everybody, to Shmooze Radio. We come to you live every single Tuesday right here on 11:50 a.m. KKNW. I am your host, Rabbi Elazar Bogomilsky. You know, we're sort of getting towards the end of the calendar year, and a lot of people are in pre-vacation mode or year-end things that they're involved in, charities. What am I giving to? Do I have some more to give to this great cause? And how are our plans coming for vacation? Who we're going to see? Who we're going to meet? What are we doing? Kids are off from school. Every part of the community is involved in some other type of discussion relationship to year-end things. And I thought it would be interesting to perhaps give a certain perspective, an understanding, from the concept of charity, the purpose, the meaning, not just about the tax break, even though that's an important component, incentive to depart with a person's financial bank account. You know, when you create something and you earn it, and it's yours. You work hard for it. It's very hard to buy in and understand the purpose and the meaning of giving charity. Yes, incentives help, tax breaks help, but I think perhaps if we schmooze about this concept of charity, the benefits, the unique components in relationship, the impact of charity, the reason why charity was created. You might say, Rabbi, created. What does that mean? And so on. These are the things that I feel would be important to discuss and analyze with you guys today. You see, the concept of charity, from a Jewish perspective, there's actually two different components in relationship to charity. According to our tradition, the Jewish tradition, the idea of tithing, giving 10% of your income, is non-negotiable, meaning that if a person earns $100, $10 of that money goes to charity. A better way to look at it, or perhaps a more meaningful way to comprehend and understand this component of charity, is that 10% was never really ours. Even though you say to yourself, what are you talking about? I made the money. It's part of my paycheck. It's part of my wages. But the concept of tithing, the way it's described and explained and in a profound manner, from a Jewish perspective, is that this 10%, these $10 of your $100 never belonged to you, was simply given to you for the purpose of giving it away. In fact, when you look back into some biblical verses that describe the power and the lesson and the law pertaining to tithing, those that are familiar with the Hebrew language and those that are familiar with biblical verses, there is no concept of a verse that has extra letters, extra words. Each letter has value, has weight, has substance, and more importantly, has a profound lesson. And when we talk about the concept of charity, the verse says, Aser a'asrenu lach, which means tithing you shall tithe. if you're writing the sentence I'm tithing and you want people to tithe, you can just write it simply. Tithe. 10% of your earnings, tithe. That's all you have to do. Tithing is 10%. What does it mean, tithing, you shall tithe? And in Hebrew, it's aser asrenu lach. Tithing, you shall tithe. A simple interpretation is that the re-emphasis of the word, this extra word that expresses and is translated for tithing, put some weight behind the importance, the urgency. That if a person is confused about tithing, asrenu lach, tithe, reconfirmation, reaffirm that the important component of tithing, 10% is not yours. That's the simple interpretation. The deeper interpretation that the Talmud shares with us and teaches us on this interesting dialogue, this codified law of giving 10%, it says, aser asrenu lach. The same word for tithing in Hebrew, when you take those three letters, ayin, sin, and resh, when you take those three letters, they also spell another word, and the word is osher. Osher means wealth, riches. The hidden interpretation or the deeper mystical interpretation is that through the avenue and the commitment of tithing, of giving 10% of your income, it's a hint to the outcome that will be God will provide tremendous wealth to you. Simply, the blessing is when you tithe, you will become wealthy. And I actually have a deeper interpretation on those statements, on that interesting verse. Because many people say, what do you mean, I tithe and I'm not wealthy? I'm not the rich person in town, but I'm very careful and I'm concerned about every $100, every $10 I give $1. Every $100 I give $10. Every dollar I'm giving 10 cents. 10 cents on the dollar I'm giving away under the caption of tithing. And I've been doing it for years and I'm not wealthy. So I think a deeper interpretation to this interesting blessing that coincides with the power of one that tithes. The way I like to look at it, wealth is translated in many different forms. Wealth could be health. Wealth could be happiness and joy. Wealth could be satisfaction from your family. Wealth could be living a life with meaning and purpose. And I didn't make up this statement. There's a classical statement that our rabbis teach us on the obvious question: who is a wealthy man? Who is the one that we consider a wealthy man? And the rabbis teach us one who's happy with their lot, content. Riches, wealth, doesn't always translate to the amount of dollars that are sitting in some safe haven. Investments, your portfolio. That too, of course. But ultimate wealth, true riches, means the individual that is satisfied, content, really content to the point that they walk around and you would not know if they're physically wealthy or they're physically rich. They give off an aura of true success, of satisfaction. Ezehu Ashir, who is that wealthy individual? The one that is sameach. Sameach means satisfied, happy, joyous. Bichalko, with their individual lots. You don't look into the other person and say, why don't I have the wealth like my neighbor, like my friend, like my brother or sister? Those colleagues are doing great. We can't make ends meet. The rich person doesn't look at another human being and then judge and then desire. That's not what it's about. It's being satisfied, satiated, looking back and say, wow, what I have is a blessing. What I have is unbelievable. That I am able to provide X, Y, and Z. Even if there are challenges along the way, there is some way that through this type of attitude, most people come out stronger and, of course, become much more appreciative of life. As we all know, and you hear this thousands of times, that not always the person that is the wealthiest is the happiest. Not always it's the one that has is the one that's satisfied. Most of the time, and I say this sadly, but most of the time, majority of the time, the individual that possesses wealth, that everyone's in awe of, internally they're miserable. Internally there's a certain component of lack of satisfaction, lack of fulfillment, lack of purpose, and so on. This concept of giving charity in the component of tithing, that 10% that you give away is the greatest challenge that I believe most people have to deal with on a daily basis. When your health is intact and seemingly you have friends and life is going good, there's no reason for prayer, you're feeling good. There's no reason for doing good things. It's all good. Most of the time, those are triggered when there's something that we want, we desire, and we can't achieve. Or we're placed in a moment of hardship, an obstacle of challenge. That's when most individuals say, whoa, maybe it's time for me to pray a little bit. Or they ask someone, pray on my behalf. I don't know why God is doing this to me, and so on. When a person gives away 10% from a certain framework of looking at this interesting and powerful law, we walk away with an understanding that, wow, God says that's a partner I can trust. You see, ultimately, it's a partnership. Every human being is a partner with our Creator. The deal is that we come into this world, we enter the world, we navigate, we search, we impact. We are given the gift to make a difference in this world. And then all of a sudden, we're granted an income, a cash flow base. You work hard, you get paid. You put in more hours, you get paid. You get lucky on this deal, there's a payout. You invest, it matures, it grows, you get paid. Now God says, wait a second. There's one little deal that we have to talk about. And that is that everything that exists in this world, that tithing is crucial to your income. Because the 10% that you have, that was a gift, an additional gift from God, is a way God's putting you in a moment of responsibility. And God says, do you know how to distribute my wealth or not? You see, ultimately, we look at wealth and we say, I have acquired it. It's my understanding, my labor, my intuition, my invention. It was my investment, my idea. And we get caught up on the my and the I. And we end up saying, you kidding me? There was no one else involved in this. It was me. When you take a step back and you say, wait a second. How many other people work hard? I was sitting with someone for coffee last week. And I turned to this individual and I said, hey, you know, you're a pretty successful businessman. Before I could even finish my sentence, he said, Rabbi, there are many people I know that are smarter than I am. There are many people I know that work harder than I do and don't have the same success. Let me make it clear. This is a gift from heaven. And that's what I needed to hear. That's what I wanted him to say. But it was so beautiful to hear the way he analyzed his life and understood that, wow, yes, of course, we both know he works hard. But what he's saying is that the level of success, seeing the fruits of his labor, many people don't. That's called a gift. To acknowledge the gift, our rabbis tell us, 10% of what you have is not yours. And the ironic question that most people don't pause to think about. When a person is successful, and you walk by people that are less successful, or poor, challenges up to their eyeballs, from health to basic needs, and we stumble through life and we say, wow, they're just not working. It's their fault. We never, ever stop to think and say, wait a second. Why is it that the world exists in this fashion? Why is it that the world has those that are very wealthy and those that are darn out simply poor? Don't have the basic necessities for the survival of the day. Do we ever ask ourselves that question? If wealth is this gift from above, if there's a God that's sort of connected to this whole orchestration and distribution, then why is it that everyone doesn't have what they need. Think of the world that we live in. Every time you needed something, it was granted. Every person would have their basic needs. If you wanted to strive and work hard, you could be granted more. We're not talking about the idea of living under a communist regime. But everyone would be granted basic necessities. You want to be wealthy? Work hard. Why is it that we live in a world that people that are extremely successful can one day lose it all? Hardworking, energetic. Some people seemingly get lucky overnight, make a fortune. Others have to work at a consistent level through the course of life. Why is it that wealth is not granted equally, or at least to some level, to every individual? The obvious answer is, based on our Jewish teachings, that God gave every individual the power. And the power is to be that individual that knows how to distribute, and distribute not your own wealth, but wealth that doesn't belong to you. When you find the lost object, do you say, hey, it's mine? Or do you try to find who the proper owner of that lost object is? Wealth, tithing, fits under that category. It's the lost object, meaning that the neighbor next to you that has less, or the person that's suffering from poverty. If we could understand the responsibility we have to simply give what's not ours, that additional 10% off the top, if we can give them that 10%, there wouldn't be a person begging on the corner of a street. There wouldn't be an individual that's unclothed, unsheltered. This is not a government responsibility. This is a humankind responsibility. Humanity at large needs to begin to understand that our responsibility is to do the general basics. The basics are that every dollar that you earn, 10 cents, give it to the poor. 10 cents, give it to those in need. 10 cents, give it to the charity of your liking. But don't put it back in your pocket. Because ultimately it's not your money. 90% is yours. Do what you please. But that additional 10% is something that is a gift from God. And now God says, wait a second. Let me see how you distribute my wealth. Let me see if this partnership is a partnership that I want to be part of. And many times you have individuals that had money and lost their money. And there are thousands of stories related to this concept. That many times the outcome was the same. The lack of commitment, the lack of understanding the purpose of their wealth. He or she, the power of what you can do by granting someone a need, 10% that's not yours, but depositing it into the proper account. That makes the world a little bit better. That makes the world a brighter haven. a brighter place, a more embracive society, a nurturing society, a caring society. When you think of someone else, automatically you act differently. You become kinder. You become a more gentle soul, more coherent to the needs of the public. Many people acquire wealth, and they acquire wealth. And every level of wealth that they reach, they become more disremoved, disengaged. More distant from the world and closer to the self-ego, self-righteousness. It used to be a fairly common phenomenon that when a person would reach a certain level of wealth, they would have a portrait made of them. A painter would come and draw a self-portrait. And it would hang in the house in a prominent area. You see this throughout noblemen, wealthy individuals, princesses, kings. This was a concept of achievement. You sit, you analyze. But ultimately, you become totally numb to society. You're not tuned in anymore. What is the need of society? How can I be of help? What is my obligation and what is my commitment? Some people say it's easy to write the check, hard to do other hands-on involvement, volunteerism. The truth be told, for many it's not so easy to write that check. We're not talking about those that have financial crisis or uncertainty. We're talking about those that even have the stability to write a double amount what's needed. They too have that challenge. This concept is called tithing. Ma'asar. 10%. You do it, God grants you wealth. It's that simple. You follow through. You give. And you distribute what wasn't really yours, was simply placed in your possession in order to give out. Instead of getting big-eyed and thinking of what you can do with it, the healthy thing is right away to acknowledge and understand that it's simply not yours. It belongs to who? To the community. It belongs to help another human being in need. He or she, the challenge and troubles that they go through, should be able to receive that support system. By who? By those that are giving those 10%. The question is there another form of charity? Is this the only component of charity that we talk about? Tithing. Is there something else? Is there an obligation to be engaged in other forms of charity or not? We're going to take a short break now. When we come back, I want to discuss other components to charity. I think it's a profound lesson for us to learn how to inspire others, how to share our wealth, and how to really make the impact that we want to. You're listening to Shmooze Radio. We'll be back right after these messages. Welcome back to Shmooze Radio. Once again, I'm your host, Rabbi Elazar Bogomilsky. We're talking about the power of charity, that is. The idea of understanding, building community, living a life with meaning and purpose. Understanding the partnership that we have with our Creator, every single day. Every moment we go through life, from a Jewish perspective, we understand the unique component and the investment, so to speak, when one partakes in the commandment, in the action of what it means to sever 10% of your income. Give it away. 10% of what you earn. You earned $100,000. $10,000 is charity. You earned $1 million, $100,000. When you get to big numbers, people say, wow, you know what I can do with that? It could be a life changer. True. But it's not yours. It could be a life changer. A person earning $5 million a year. A lot of money. $5 million. You're saying that $500,000 has to be given away to charity. Just think of the world. Think of the organizations that exist out there. The individuals that are suffering. And the reason why this was created, this 10% component, is simply because when you have everybody active in giving 10% of their income, there wouldn't be an organization or an individual in need writing you an appeal letter, please help us. Help us close the gap. Help us. Or some individual saying, I don't have. The system works. But everyone has to be part of that system. It was created, it was designed to help the community. To remove those of poverty. Remove the embarrassment. Or the troubles, what it means to go to bed with an empty stomach and wake up not knowing where the next dollar will come from. Why did God create it this way? Why does He demand that partnership, 90 is yours, 10 give away? Because that's what creates a society. If everybody had what they needed, there would be no energy, no excitement, no temptation on one hand, and no reward on the other. Life would be dull. When we have these two components that on one hand, there's the one that's the recipient. When they receive that level of support, two things are happening. Either they're asking and you're giving, or you're self-aware of the need and you provide. You have a world that is giving and taking and giving and taking. That's what a world is about. The world was created to be a world of interaction. The great mystics describe this world as a world of action, a world of tangibility, substance, physicality. With that comes temptation, challenges in its own right. But when you rise to the occasion, you give of yourself. And there's somebody on the other end that's a recipient and receives that support and that help. That's building a society. That's building a world That's called from a deep mystical perspective. Tikkun olam to the highest level, perfecting the world, making the world a haven, a place where you want to hang your hat and say, this is the place that I want to be part of. This 10%, it's not mine. Imagine if everyone looked at their paycheck and they said, okay, I walk home with X amount of dollars. Now 10% of that, let's figure out how can we give that away? Who can impact from it? Can be impacted by it? Who can we help? An individual, an organization. Where can I make my difference? Simply because it's really not mine. It was gifted to me that I should be able to know and be wise to distribute it. All of it. All of that 10% is not mine. When we talk about from a Jewish perspective, the concept of tzedakah, as we call it in Hebrew, tzedakah actually is deeper than this 10% component. Tzedakah means righteousness. In Hebrew, the root of the word would be tzedek, doing justice, a righteous justice act. Ironically, in Hebrew, we don't call it charity. When people hear the word charity, we think it's money. But according to Jewish law, beyond the component of tithing, which is an obligation upon every single Jew to tithe 10% of their income, beyond that obligation, there's a separate commandment. Many people don't know the difference between these two. They don't differentiate. But the reality is, the concept of tzedakah goes way beyond that 10%. Helping the poor, the reward for helping the poor, helping someone in need. And the way Maimonides breaks it down into 8 categories of giving charity. The highest to the lowest. They're all forms of giving. The question is how you give. Do you give that the recipient is aware and you're aware of the recipient? Do you give that you are aware but the recipient is not aware? Or the recipient is aware that it's you, but you don't know who the recipient is. Or that both parties don't know who's actually giving and who's the receiver. Or is, as the classical statement says, give someone the ability to fish and teach them how to fish. So they should become a fisherman on their own right. Give someone the power of having that education, that profession. So one day they too can be part of a giving pool. According to Maimonides, that's actually the highest level of tzedakah, of doing acts of justice and righteousness. It's when you engage on that level and you participate in building a society of giving charity, even if it's the lowest level, that the recipient knows who it is and you're aware of who the recipient is as well. You walk over to a person that is poor and you say, what can I help you with that, with your needs? How can I help you? How much can I be of help with? According to Maimonides, this is the basic level, the no frills level, so to speak. But it's a very, very important and powerful level. Because the concept of charity, the way Judaism interprets, which is tzedakah, goes way beyond the 10%. It becomes part of your DNA. When you see someone in need, you don't look back at your paycheck and say, wait a second. Do I have the funds? Do I not? Did I go over my 10% obligation? Notice I used the term an obligation. Charity is not an obligation. Charity is doing acts of righteousness. The obligation is the first 10%. Charity, righteousness, a just behavior can be more, 11, 12, 14, 15% of your income. Who knows? And that's in your control. For that, you can give $1. You can give $1,000. The 10% is non-negotiable. The 10% is that basic fundamental principle that it's simply not yours. That first 10% off the top belongs to who? To society. You can decide who you give it to. You can decide how well you want to distribute it, but it's all for distribution. 90 is yours. You keep it. You invest it. You blow it. You spend it on good things, whatever it is that you want, that's yours. That 10% is simply not yours. It's hard to get over this idea. When we're built in our DNA and we say, wait a second, I worked, it's my money, it's my income. I can't give 10, I can maybe give 2, I can give 3. I can give 1%. 10 is way too much. The healthiest thing is to create an account that right off the top, 10% of your paycheck goes straight into that account. People do this when they create family foundations. They have a percentage going off straight into the foundation. But I believe every person, it's much easier to sever your income. The hard labor that you put into working and bringing in those dollars, to now say 10%, it's still, I can talk till I'm blue in the face. You're going to say, Rabbi, I just can't do it. It helps if you can put it in another account. Take 10% and build it as your family charity account. And from there, it's much easier to give. That's the advice I usually give a lot of people that struggle with the idea of severing their 10%. But the concept of charity, doing righteous acts, giving gifts to those in need, is not limited to your 10%. What I want to share with you is that it is getting close to the year end. Couple of weeks out. Many people are discussing and analyzing. What should we give to? Do we give? Are we in the position to give this year? Maybe not this year. Maybe we'll tackle it next year. My message to you is don't be fooled. Don't undermine the blessing that you do have. Utilize that relationship and that connection and say, wait a second. I'm going to give and I'm going to provide what I don't have, seemingly because it's really not mine. That 10% is not mine. I'm going to be that distributor, and I can guarantee you'll feel like a different human being. You'll walk differently. You'll act differently. You'll have so much more meaning and purpose to the hard labor that you put in to make that income, and understanding that 10% is not yours. And then you can delve into that component of general charity, giving and more giving, and becoming a true leader in society. When people will look and say, wow, that's the individual I want to be like. That's the person that I want to follow their path. I want to wish you all a blessed week, a charitable week, and a very, very meaningful, and I say it again, meaningful day. You're listening to Shmooze Radio. We'll be back same time, same place next week.